When did normal people disappear from TV and why is everybody on TV just rich right now? Growing up, like my after school TV diet was a steady rotation of shows where people actually dealt with money, like Skins, Misfits, Breaking Bad, It's Always Sunny, The Wire, Friday Night Lights, etc. Even those kind of family shows like Full House or Boy Meets World, they had financial constraints. Now we are seeing TV shows like Succession and Just Like That, where wealth is abundant and in your face, right? And here's the thing, this shift isn't just happening, it's not accidental, and it's definitely not innocent. I believe that we are living in an age of aspirational television, and it is happening exactly at the moment when that aspiration has become more impossible than ever for people watching. So, today I want to talk about why everyone on TV is rich right now, how this is literally rewiring our brains about money, and what it's doing to our psychology. Because this is not just about entertainment, it is about how an entire generation is learning to understand about wealth, success, and what a normal financial life is supposed to look like. So before I talk about what's happening on screen, I want to talk about what's happening in our actual lives because the context here really does matter. Over the past decade, while median household income has increased about 20%, housing costs have gone up nearly 40%. Student loan debt has reached $1.7 trillion. And the gig economy now represents over a third of the workforce, which means irregular income is becoming the norm, not the exception. Meanwhile, a recent study found that a majority of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency expense. And that is not a small subset of people. That is nearly half the country living essentially paycheck to paycheck. And as real financial stress has increased, our media consumption has become our primary reference point for what financial normal looks like. And that's where things become very problematic. See, there's this concept in psychology called social comparison theory. Basically, we judge our success and well being by comparing ourselves to others. For most of human history, those others were our neighbors, coworkers, classmates, people whose actual financial situations we could reasonably observe and understand. But now, our reference group includes people on social media, people in the media, people whose lives don't actually exist, whose wealth is in some ways partially fictional, and whose lives are funded by brand partnerships or TV production budgets. But your brain cannot always make that distinction. When you spend dozens of hours with fictional characters, your subconscious starts to treat them like real relationships. This is also known as parasocial relationships, which are these one sided emotional connections that feel genuine to your brain. Even if you consciously realize it, you might unconsciously treat it as a real relationship. And if your parasocial circle is filled with people spending millions of dollars on things, your reference point for what is financially normal shifts. And this creates something called expectation inflation, which we see in survey after survey when people think about what it takes to be financially successful. Their financial baseline for what is financially wealthy is so skewed beyond what the median would be. And I think a lot of this has to do with our media diet. I think the psychological pressure to increase your spending as your reference group's apparent wealth increases, even when your actual income has not increased at all. So we've got this entire generation of people experiencing more financial stress than previous generations, while simultaneously being exposed to more fictional wealth than previously. And this is not a recipe for financial wellness, obviously. This is a recipe for feeling like you are failing at life, even if you're doing fine by any objective measure. So I want to get specific about what is happening in your brain when you are consuming this type of media. Your brain is unbelievably sophisticated, but it is also easy to trick. When you watch the rich live richly, both on TV, on your social media feed, night after night, your brain doesn't see fiction. It forms these genuine emotional connections with these characters, with these influencers also online. And over time, you share experiences with them. You watch them navigate relationships, make decisions, face challenges, and your brain develops something that resembles intimacy and friendship. And research in media psychology shows that parasocial relationships activate the same neural pathways as real relationships. Your brain internally, unconsciously, can't always tell the difference between spending time with a friend and spending time with a character that you are invested in. Plus, your subconscious doesn't always make a clear distinction between that friend and that character. So if your social circle, real and fictional combined, is filled with people that is spending all this money, your reference point shifts. On top of all of this, we carry these deep unconscious beliefs about money that we have absorbed from our families, our culture, our experiences. Things like money doesn't grow on trees, or rich people are greedy, or you have to work hard to earn money. And when your media diet is dominated by characters where money seems to flow effortlessly, it starts to rewrite these beliefs. The new script might become, if I'm struggling with money, I must be doing it wrong because look how easy it is for everyone else. Except that everyone else on TV is fictional. Even influencers, it's unbelievably easy to fake wealth online, but it's hard for us to discern what is real and what is fake. And again, when all of the unconscious messaging about wealth makes it seem like an individual achievement, any sort of financial struggle feels like an individual issue. And your brain absorbs these messages that this level of wealth is somehow normal or obtainable, when really it is so beyond the medium or what is normal for most people. And again, your subconscious is constantly calibrating what normal looks like based on what you see most often. And if what you see most often is this high level of wealth, that becomes your baseline for comparison. Research from UCLA found that heavy viewers of aspirational television content reported higher levels of financial dissatisfaction and anxiety, even when controlling for actual income levels. People weren't unhappy because they were poor, they were unhappy because they felt poor relative to their median consumption. I always say that wealth is relative. It is very much based on the people around you. If you are a millionaire hanging out with people making $100,000, you feel rich. If you're a millionaire only hanging out with billionaires, you might not feel rich in comparison because your reference group is people that are richer than you. And this isn't just changing how you feel about your own finances. It also can change how you understand people's financial struggles. When most characters on TV, people you see on social media don't live paycheck to paycheck or stress about student loan payments or downsize their living situation to afford rent, those experiences start to feel like personal failures instead of completely normal responses to economic pressures. And so we are inadvertently creating a culture where the financial reality of most Americans feels abnormal, even to Americans themselves. Okay, so you might be thinking, this type of content, this type of TV is aspirational. It's escapism, right? Like it's just what audiences want to watch. And yeah, there's some truth to that. But this shift is not driven primarily by audience demand. It is driven by very specific business incentives that a lot of viewers might not understand. So let's follow the money, right? Television and social media is entertainment, yes, but it is also a delivery system for advertising first and foremost. And advertisers have a very strong preference for viewers who feel inspired to consume, not ones who are struggling financially. If a character is worried about paying their electric bill, they're not aspirational. They are not they cannot convincingly model the purchase of something, especially not a $300 skincare or designer handbag. Wealthy characters, on the other hand, make consumption look effortless and are therefore desirable. And I think that's why we see a lot of trends like the quiet luxury trend around succession. Like these are all examples of like why aspiration is often a huge driver of purchasing, and a lot of companies take advantage of that. And whether you notice a product placement or not, TV shows are constantly promoting specific brands. And if you have a strong emotional connection to that character, remember those parasocial relationships I just mentioned, and they're living a life you want, you're significantly more likely to purchase what you see them using on screen. And the research is pretty staggering. A single product placement on a popular show can increase sales by 20 to 30%. But this only works if the character using the product seems like someone the audience wants to emulate. And this creates a very specific feedback loop. Wealth focused content attracts luxury brand partnerships. Those partnerships fund more wealth focused content. And the result is a media ecosystem that increasingly depicts economic experiences available to maybe 5% of the population while ignoring the realities of the other 95%. But it also goes even deeper than these product placements. Streaming platforms have fundamentally changed the economics of television production. If you think about Netflix, HBO, Hulu, in the old broadcast model, shows needed to appeal to the broadest possible audience to maximize advertising revenue because it was in ad placements kind of throughout the show. That incentivized some level of middle class representation because middle class viewers were the largest demographic, right? But streaming platforms make money through subscriptions, not advertising. And they discovered that a lot of that prestige content, which almost always means wealthy characters in very expensive settings, often helps differentiate their platforms and justify those higher subscription costs. This is the reason why you'll see Netflix spend $200 million on a single season of a show like The Crown. It's not that 200 million people are necessarily watching The Crown, it's that The Crown makes Netflix feel premium, exclusive, and worth paying for. This business model means that the financial struggles of most Americans literally just don't make business sense to portray in TV. Working class stories don't attract luxury brand partnerships. Middle class financial anxiety doesn't sell premium products. So we end up with a media landscape where economic experiences of the vast majority of people are commercially unviable to represent authenticity. And the same thing can be applied to social media. The algorithms reward aspirational, sensationalist content, often the content of these wealthy lifestyles. Brands often want to work with these types of people that kind of showcase this lifestyle of aspiration. It's the exact same thing. And this explains why a lot of the content you see on social media might not feel like relatable to you. Because again, brands don't necessarily want to work with relatable. They want to work with people that are aspirational. I also want to touch on reality TV because I believe that it's really gone through a lot of the same transformation. So let's talk about kind of the OG reality TV show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It debuted in 2007, and the family was upper class, but lived, relatively speaking, in a modest house. There were still those like recognizable elements of normal family life, right? Fast forward to today, reality TV has really just become fetishization of wealth. Private jets, multiple homes, casual shopping sprees. This genre has essentially stopped documenting anything other than money. And this serves both advertisers and streaming platforms equally. But it does something really damaging to our collective understanding of what normal financial life actually looks like. Because reality TV was supposed to be reality, right? And now it's kind of the same as any other TV show. It's just like this aspirational thing. This is not just about consumption, though it is. It's also about politics. When media makes wealth look abundant, available, and just around the corner, it reinforces the idea that if you just hustle hard enough, manifest correctly, buy the right thing, that you will get ahead. The idea of the meritocracy. It reinforces the idea that financial struggle is a personal failing rather than a systemic issue. If TV regularly reminded us how broken many aspects of our economic system are, we might demand change. Instead, media helps maintain the status quo by making wealth feel normal and financial struggles feel individual. When wealthy characters dominate our screens and our social media feeds, it becomes easier to think that anyone who's struggling financially must be doing something wrong, right? If it feels like wealth is right around the corner, struggle might be a personal choice, right? Obviously, that's wrong, but that's a message our media diet is sending. And this is particularly damaging for young adults who are forming their first independent relationships with money. If your understanding of normal adult financial life comes primarily from TV or from influencers, you're going to feel like you're failing when real adult life, in reality, involves things like budgeting, trade offs, and constraint. I've seen this myself, both in my life and also just talking with other financial experts and regular people about money. So many people come to me feeling like there's something wrong with them because they can't afford the lifestyle they are seeing constantly modeled on social media, in the media. They feel shame about not being able to afford certain things, not being able to go on regular vacations, just having to think through certain things. But here's the thing, for the vast majority of people, these constraints are completely normal. In fact, in a lot of cases, they are signs of financial responsibility and awareness. The problem isn't their financial management. It's that they're comparing their real financial life to these fictional lives that don't follow the rules of economic reality. I think there's also a broader cultural cost to this like wealth washing of American media. When working class experiences disappear from popular culture, it becomes easier to ignore working class political needs. When middle class financial anxiety is not represented in mainstream media, it becomes easier to dismiss middle class concerns as individual problems rather than systemic issues. Media representation matters, and it matters because it shapes not just how we see ourselves, but how we see each other. And right now, we are creating a culture where the financial experiences of most Americans are invisible in our most popular and influential entertainment. And the result is almost a kind of financial gaslighting on a cultural scale. If your day to day financial reality involves budgeting, making trade offs, having money stress, but everything you consume online suggests that these experiences are unusual or problematic, you are going to internalize the message that you are somehow failing. But you aren't failing. The media representation is failing to reflect reality. Okay, so we've established that there is a problem, but the question is like, what can we do about it? First, I want to talk about what you can do as an individual viewer to protect your money psychology. The first is to start paying attention to the economics of what you're watching. Notice how money is presented on screen, on your social media feed, how it's discussed or not discussed, and how it reflects or doesn't reflect your own reality. It's also really important to notice when characters' lifestyles don't match their supposed incomes. And it's important to just kind of continuously ask yourself, is this realistic? Who is this story for? What is being normalized here? And I understand that a lot of TV, especially TV, feels aspirational. You're like, what's the point? It's fiction. But it's just important to kind of go through these thought processes just to start to slowly unwire kind of these unconscious things that you internalize when you consume this type of TV. If you're watching a show like White Lotus or Succession, where just extreme wealth is on display, treat it like a case study and how extreme wealth actually operates rather than something to aspire to, right? Like what created this wealth? What political systems protect it? How do these characters' relationship with money like differ from yours? Also, it is so, so, so important to take the time to understand your own money psychology and your own values and related to your money. So many people don't do this with their money. I think a lot of people see money as a subjective thing when really it is so emotional and so wrapped up in our sense of self. And so I think when you think about setting financial goals, you don't think about how this relates to actually what you want to get out of life. Money is a tool to help you live the life you want to live. And unless you have a crystal clear understanding of what you value and what you actually want to use money for, a lot of times you'll end up spending money in a way that is someone else's goal or kind of what society tells you to do. So taking the time to get really, really clear about what your goals are, what you care about, can help you avoid kind of social conditioning from media or social media and help you use money actually in the way that you want to use it. I also recommend diversifying your media diet, like actively seeking out content that depicts like diverse economic experiences. And while a lot of the shows today do showcase like super wealthy people, there are also lots of shows that have more diversity. Shows like The Bear, Abbott Elementary, like yeah, they're maybe a little bit harder to find, but they still exist. And so just being more intentional about the types of media you consume, especially on social media, is super, super important. And most importantly, use your voice to challenge the normalization of fictional wealth. When you're discussing shows with friends, point out the economic absurdities. Share articles and videos like this one that examine the financial psychology of media consumption. Because what I really want you to understand is that your financial struggles, constraints, and decision making aren't personal failures. In a lot of cases, they are rational responses to real economic conditions and mental conditioning that you have had for probably most of your life. And the media landscape wants you to feel inadequate about your financial reality because inadequacy drives consumption. But your financial reality is probably much more normal than what you see on screen. I also want to point out that there's a broader cultural conversation that we need to have about what success actually looks like. Right now, a lot of our media, both online and on TV, suggests that success often means effortless wealth, unlimited consumption, freedom from financial constraint. But that's not just unrealistic for most people, it might not even be desirable. Real financial success has to be defined on your terms. It might look like having enough to handle emergencies, being able to afford things that truly matter to you, having just more flexibility to make better career choices for yourself. And none of that requires living like a super rich TV character. In fact, a lot of TV characters would probably benefit from some of the financial habits and awareness that you are already practicing. We're living in a media ecosystem that increasingly depicts a world most of us will never inhabit while ignoring the one that most of us actually live in. And this isn't just bad for entertainment, it's bad for our collective understanding of what normal financial life looks like and what it should look like. So the goal is to never enjoy aspirational television or completely avoid, seeing wealth content online. The goal is to maintain a clear boundary between education and entertainment, have more media literacy, and understand what's realistic to expect from your own financial life. This video helped you think differently about media and money. Please like and subscribe for more deep dives about money psychology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.